Zoos. Don't you just love them? Honestly, one of my favorite things to do in life is enjoy a nice afternoon checking one out, seeing what kinds of animals they have and how they're treated, and maybe interacting with a couple if that's allowed. Perhaps I should look up zoos online. Surely that word hasn't been hijacked by the lowest of the low. Scum of the earth degenerates. Foolish me, I thought these kinds of people were in short supply, but apparently they're far from being under the threat of extinction. Though, in my opinion, they should be. The actual endangered species are whatever animals have the misfortune of attracting the attention of these humans, or, God forbid, having one of them as an owner. And I use the term humans loosely. Today's topic is Quantum Kitty, which makes me think that anyone with kitty in their online handle needs to be relocated to an insane asylum as soon as possible. Of course, any video about this kind of person requires me to emphasize that viewer discretion is advised. Even though disgusting and degenerate material is the norm on this channel, the topics we're going to cover in this video are truly not safe for life. You have been warned. Today, I have a riddle for you. Where can you find amazing boss fights, epic arena battles, endless amounts of challenges to complete daily, and all that squeezed into your mobile phone? You've probably already guessed it, it's Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is actually a hit mobile game played by more than 80 million people worldwide, and is completely free to play, so there's no harm in downloading and trying it out. You can either take it easy by casually playing, or go competitive and try to be one of the best in the game. And if you're like me and enjoy PvP, then you'll love fighting in the arena. It's all about building your team of champions to make you look as stacked as possible before fighting other people's teams. Here's a few basic tips to get you started before you dive in. Moving fast is definitely key. Whoever makes the first move usually ends up the winner, so be as decisive as possible if you can. Having a good nuker helps too. A champion with a super powerful attack that can wipe out the other team before they can retaliate can be really useful. And don't forget about debuffs. This is really important. They help to reduce your opponent's defense, speed, and attack. They really add up in my experience. Raid actually has a St. Valentine's event going on right now. New players can join in a special themed adventure called Raid Love Quest. All you gotta do is download Raid Shadow Legends from my link below, copy your in-game player ID, and then go to raidlovequest.plarium.com. Enter your player ID to set out on a unique quest, running for 1 month from February 14th to March 14th. You could even play one of the Valentine's Day themed minigames for a chance to win in-game and IRL prizes, including Valentine's Day themed champions and Amazon gift cards. These are worth up to $1,000. But there's more. New players use my link or scan the QR code right here and get a free starter pack with this cool in-game loot. So what are you waiting for? Download Raid Shadow Legends today. And of course, thanks so much to Raid for sponsoring today's video. Meet Sean Kreese, a US Marine who, despite being in his early 20s, looks to be about 39 and have a problem with alcohol. I guess being into getting it on with your pets really takes its toll on your health and well-being. You might be asking why there's a mugshot of him in the first place, and that's what we'll be finding out in a moment. But let's rewind a little bit to before his eccentricities got him in trouble with the law. Among his many deleted instances of online presence, the earliest picture we have of Sean is the one that he has as his profile on Pinterest. I'll make a little caveat here to mention that his bio on Pinterest is, "Science, I like science." So you know the guy must be an intellectual heavyweight. The fact that the vest he's seen wearing isn't a genuine Marine Corps surplus vest, but an airsoft mag carrier, indicates that he wasn't in the Marines yet. This, added to the fact that he was settled into his position as a Marine around 2020, when he would have been 20 years old, suggests that he's either 19 or younger in the photo. That being said, how easy is it to get into the Marine Corps? Are they that hard-pressed to recruit that they're scraping the bottom of the barrel to pull in these kinds of people? I'll make sure to get a couple of Mandarin and Russian classes in, because frankly, with these kinds of people in the Marines, if World War III cracks off, we're definitely not making it. But how do we know that this guy is a zoophile? Well, it's a pretty safe guess when he trips over himself to take every opportunity to tell any living soul that he is one. You would expect that someone with an inclination this criminally disgusting and illegal in any minimally civilized part of the world would make some kind of effort to hide it, but it's quite the opposite. The more taboo something is, the more that some have the compulsion to talk about it and tell everyone within sight. On his Twitter account, he proclaimed his expressed love for bestiality from the rooftops. A few indelible truths. Animals can consent. Zoophilia is valid and beautiful. There is absolutely nothing even remotely wrong with loving an animal as one would a human. Don't like it? Ah ha ha ha. Too bad. Apparently, he couldn't keep his sickness to himself and had to debate others on the topic online. These deeply philosophical, ethical arguments even included him defending the act of violating an animal after death. A dead animal can't consent, just like a living animal can't consent either. Consent is inapplicable to the dead. Live animals can consent. Okay, see it from a point of respect. Imagine someone f***s the corpse of one of your dead relatives. Again, simply not applicable to animals. The animal's family isn't going to be offended or hurt from their family member being f***ed after death. They wouldn't even know about it. Well, I think that's enough Twitter for today. His YouTube playlist of favorite videos, for example, besides the odd source filmmaker meme, is littered with My Little Pony clips, which is probably how he got into this stuff in the first place. And one particularly pernicious video titled Presentation, Sexual Ethics, Zoophilia, Necrophilia, Pedophilia. Though the combination of those elements are enough to raise suspicion, Sean leaves no room for speculation, as he has an account under the same handle on Zooville, a site centered around discussing zoophilia and bestiality. His bio reads, "Hello, I'm Quantum Kitty, Twitter's most infamous zoophile. Male, 20, equinophile, INTP, US Marine, lover of math and science. Meow?" The fact that he has his Myers-Briggs personality test results right next to the word equinophile is really something else. I'll say it right now, do not ever go on this website. It's exactly the kind of thing you'd think could only be hosted in the deep web or some insane Eastern European Telegram chat. However, it's not only up in public, but it's still active as we speak. I'd say this is a job for hackers if it weren't much more deserving of a specialized firing squad. In Minecraft. In Roblox. Meta-irony, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of displaying your most deranged peculiarities for all to see, and where it can be easily traced back to your real-life identity, this wasn't the only public forum that Sean participated in. Because of how few and far between English-speaking extremely online zoos happen to be, they tend to unite into little niches where everyone knows and defends each other. Birds of a feather flock together, I suppose. In early 2021, it was announced on Twitter that Quantum Kitty would be joining two others, Toggle the Rat and Lovecat, on the explicitly pro-zoophile podcast Zooier Than Thou. Yes, you heard me right, a zoo podcast. To me, it sounds absurd, but apparently there's a lot of them. Extremely online people love starting podcasts, after all. The ZTT podcast features episodes such as Zoophilia and Religion, Mixed Relationships, Zoos and Non-Zoos, and Women in the Zoo Community. You know what? I'm glad they're finally fixing their female representation problem. That was always the most glaringly obvious issue with zoos. They weren't diverse enough with women. I can't really think of anything else that's objectionable about them now that that's taken care of. Current year truly is progressive. I cannot for the life of me stress how absurd it is that a podcast exists where these guys sit down for an hour or so, openly talking about their lifestyle, with royalty-free smooth jazz playing in the background. The aberrant garbage is everywhere the eyes can see just from clicking on the website. And yes, there is a functioning website for it, available on the ClearNet. I can't even show you guys these people's character designs because they are always not safe for not being traumatized. Their online presence isn't contained in just their own site though. They also have a Twitter account, so you can stay up to date on when new episodes are coming out, which I'm sure all of you are chomping at the bit for. Surprisingly enough, the podcast is even up on YouTube. People have tried and succeeded at getting it taken down before, but they just made a new channel and re-uploaded everything again. Welcome to YouTube, folks, where these guys can talk about R-wording animals out in the open, but if I talk about them talking about R-wording animals out in the open, I'll get hit with an age restriction. Awesome. To summarize as much as possible, the podcast currently has a handful of interchangeable hosts. There's Lovecat, real name Chad Grisham, who loves to spend time on Quora answering inquiries such as, "How do I have sex with a cow?" His answer was, "Passing this on from a friend with considerable years of cow sex experience." And that's where I'm going to stop reading. You also have Zooey, Kinophile, and Canis Gnosis. Kinophile has a couple of old Reddit posts doing zoo AMAs which were about as well received as you'd expect. And Canis Gnosis retweets new agey inspirational quotes. "There is no exercise better for the heart than reaching down and lifting someone else up. Growth is uncomfortable because you've never been here before. You've never seen this version of you. So give yourself a little grace and breathe through it." Nothing quite like putting live, laugh, love, and keep calm and carry on type quotes on your timeline right next to your arguments about why bestiality is ethical. The cognitive dissonance these people possess defies all logic and reasoning, and yet here we are. However, the founders of the podcast, Fosty and Toggle, take the cake for just how demented they are. Fosty, or Douglas Spink, wasn't just your run-of-the-mill zoophile. He owned a VPN company and used to be an international drug trafficker. At one point, he was arrested for nothing other than running a farm dedicated entirely to the purpose of bestiality. An article about this incident from 2010 in the Sydney Morning Herald does a good job of explaining Douglas Spink's backstory. Spink, 39, made a fortune in Oregon buying and selling small companies in the 1990s and was known as an adrenaline junkie, listing rock climbing and base jumping off cliffs, radio towers, and bridges among his hobbies. But by 2002, his wealth had evaporated. He filed for bankruptcy as creditors sought millions from him, and he began running cocaine and marijuana across the border for a local drug kingpin. Spink was arrested in 2005 after investigators pulled him over with a load of nearly 170 kilograms of cocaine, valued at $34 million. Authorities searched his farm after prosecutors received a tip from a public defender's office in Tennessee. Dozens of dogs, horses, and pet mice were seized, along with what investigators described as thousands of images of bestiality and apparent CP. There were mice that had their tails cut off, they were smothered in Vaseline, and had string tied around them. When agents searched Spink's home, they found a video of a man sexually abusing dogs, and that same man was still on the property wearing the same clothes as in the video. Apparently, this farm was part of some kind of program or operation Spink was running, which even had its own website, though he wasn't very subtle about what was really going on. Spink has a history of training and breeding dogs and horses. He calls his operation Exit Point Stallions Limited, and expounds at length on his website about his philosophy. Are we unconventional in our approach to stallion care? Absolutely, he writes. He later adds, "We don't wall off sexual energy in our stallions as something dangerous or inappropriate, but rather channel that energy towards positive, safe, appropriate paths. There's a proper time and place for it, and we work towards those sort of skills rather than fighting unwinnable fights against deeply rooted instincts." It was at this same farm, by the way, where Kenneth Pinion, or as he's usually called online, Mr. Hands, died from injuries suffered while being mounted by a horse. And yes, I do mean mounted in that way. As for Spink, he ended up dying in 2020 after succumbing to cancer in his, behind region. These people would rather inflict internal bleeding upon themselves or contract cancer than refrain from engaging in these horrific proclivities. Let that sink in, truly. Take it in. Or don't. Feel free to relinquish all this information to some dark recess of your mind and never think about it ever again. I wish I could. Long before the formation of the Zooier Than Thou podcast, Spink was making other attempts at normalizing the twisted behavior of zoos. One was the Twitter account Cross Species Alliance, created in March 2013. Its bio reads, "Defending the historical role, community, and core legal rights of zoophiles via activism." Along with this was the hashtag LGBTZ, an attempt at putting zoophilia under the LGBT umbrella. The account's last bit of activity before it went silent, presumably due to Spink's death, was retweeting, "Why horse racing is cruel and needs to end." A classic tactic these people use is feigning compassion towards animals, as if they were even more sensitive to their sufferings than the average person. Then they turn around and argue for why it's okay to use their corpses, or end up being exposed for zoo sadism. Speaking of which, that brings me to the zoo sadism leaks. In 2018, a Telegram channel sharing some of the most abhorrent animal abuse content known to man was exposed, along with the furries and zoos who were a part of it. Many of you are probably already aware of this event, and when it took place, the Cross Species Alliance account was very quick to come to the defense of those implicated. Nothing in your screenshots shows zoo sadism. That mega archive, from our search through it thus far, doesn't either. Conflating zoos with zoo sadism may be a neat PR trick, but it's f***ed up this entire effort to pin down real zoo sadist horrors. Clear and convincing evidence exists of intentional conflation of healthy zoophilia with the horrors of actual zoo sadism. Such conflation, again, only serves to distract focus from efforts to identify and respond to tangible, objective abuse of non-humans. That's a disgrace. Such conflation, it seems clear, is done by those deeply prejudiced towards zoophiles and our community in an attempt to score political points and thus to further express their bigotry. That such petty politicking directly hinders work targeting real abuse is, again, a true disgrace. On the other hand, Toggle the Rat is much more of an amateur in comparison. Don't mistake this for me saying he's somehow not that bad. His likes, according to his Fur Affinity account, include age play, age differences, and underage characters, as well as grandfather/grandson, incest, and, obviously, zoophilia. With this in mind, it makes sense that he gets mad when people conflate pedophilia with cubs, which are furries interested in LARPing as young animals, often depicted as toddlers or babies. Like Spink, as well as many other zoos and furries, he tried to include zoophilia under the LGBT+ umbrella. His Twitter bio also says, "Minors do not interact," but given that he defends maps, it's the minors that need to be worried about the kind of interactions Toggle has in mind for them. Toggle has also been implicated in these Zoosadism leaks, though no conclusive evidence has been found for him being a Zoosadist, besides being associated with many. One of the people the leak was primarily about was Caro the Wolf, someone that has been covered previously by yours truly. Speaking of Caro, Quantum Kitty avidly stood up for him on Twitter, so he and Toggle definitely have a lot of shared interests. Zooier Than Thou also had Hypnotist Sappho on the podcast, so their track record is truly astonishing when it comes to bringing together the worst of the worst. It's like every evil furry I've ever made a video about is just grabbing drinks together every night and catching up. The announcement for their episode with Quantum said that they would be discussing animal autonomy and the inherent value of experience.
Animals playing with balls is my favorite thing.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I love watching animals play with toy balls.
Yeah, all kinds of toys.
In practice, this meant equivocating the meat industry with breaking into barns and violating the animals inside. The twisted history of the Zooier Than Thou podcast is much more extensive than we have time to cover here, but hopefully, all of this is sufficient enough to give a good idea of what Quantum Kitty's moral character is, given the kind of people that he associates with. Thankfully, not every online acquaintance of Quantum's was as friendly to his endeavors as these people are. Typically, when I make these videos, the non-zoophile furries get bunched in with the rest since, let's face it, there are a lot of zoophiles that are also furries. However, on this occasion, despite my personal opinions about furries, I do have to mention that some of the first people to go after Quantum Kitty were people from the furry community, who didn't like how he, along with the other zoos, were slowly infiltrating their spaces. Two people in particular, Coyote Lovely and Relly, would engage directly with Quantum Kitty and actually confront him about certain things he's been doing online, such as sending bestiality porn to minors. Sean's bulletproof defense, which would certainly hold up in a court of law, was that he did it as an argument, as he had been debating these minors on whether dogs could consent or not. The video was supposedly to be proof of their capability to consent, according to him.
Because not only have you just admitted to watching zoophile porn, bestiality porn, sending it to people, and even with the context you've given, scum of society. Literally, below that, you animals. Animals can't consent.
It's a fact. Prove it.
Prove a negative. Prove a negative. Oh yeah, I'm so smart. I'm gonna tell you to prove a negative.
That's because they're animals. They have the minds of fucking toddlers. They're gonna you're other species, yeah? They're gonna other people.
You're equating fully developed animals who are fully developed to engage in sexual interaction to children who are absolutely not.
I have no idea what you said.
Mr. Zoophile, if you actually go pick up a puppy from the pound and then wait until it's old enough to have sex with it, does that make you an orbiter as well? Like, or were you a pedophile or groomer? Like, what is that? Like, what do we call you in that situation? Aside from sick.
Well, considering I don't have sex with underage animals, no, I'm not a...
Wait, all animals are underage, though.
Underage animals. Oh my god. What is the age of consent for an animal? Please tell me. Is it 2 barks for yes, 1 bark for no?
If we want to establish an age of consent for a dog, we could argue that it's when it's fully developed in every sense, physically, mentally, and sexually, which tends to be...
I think we're done here, Relly.
No, you're done here because you don't have a valid argument.
I don't need an argument to make fun of you, you fucking dumbass.
Then get the fuck out of here.
This has been really, really fun. Real quick, I guess I'll leave us off as well. Go to your roof and just do a backflip.
But please stop fucking animals.
Not gonna happen.
God damn it.
One comment under the YouTube upload of this video reads as follows. He sent it to several minors, including me. The whole reason I created Quantum Crackhead, now Crackhead the Duck, a parody of Sean's original Twitter account, was to get back at him for sending me that disgusting shit. Of course, once that parody gained traction, he mass reported it, but since the account didn't break TOS, he did not get his way. And recently, he did something that crossed the line too far. He saved and posted a photo of me without my consent. So now, not only has he sent me bestiality, he saved a photo of me and posted it as his argument with someone else. First, sending minors bestiality, now saving and sharing pictures of them. Seems we're going in an appropriate direction. This discussion, wherein Sean admitted to doing these things, was just a clip from a larger video which is still up on YouTube if you want to go check it out for yourself. As it turns out, this spat over his online interactions with a minor would later reveal themselves to be just a drop in the ocean of Sean's misdeeds, if you can believe that. After having publicly vilified Sean, people began reaching out to Coyote Lovely to essentially give him more ammo to use against Quantum Kitty, who became paranoid about it. This led Sean to conduct an entire online crusade of gaslighting against Coyote, as this thread by Twitter account Zoophile Struggle Tweets, or Strugs, shows. The images attached were screenshots of Sean's conversations with people whom apparently considered him a friend, saying things like, "You should give me everything you have on Coyote. I can do my digging and hopefully come up with a full docs. When you give me the go-ahead, I can then release it. Coyote isn't really a good friend to anyone, it seems, only seems to care about using people. If your usefulness has run out, he'll toss you to the wayside. If you decide you don't like what he's doing, you're his new target." This was quite a case of projection, as Sean was evidently doing what he was accusing Coyote of. In his efforts to isolate Coyote from everyone else online, he would go around Struggs' back and talk to his friends, manipulating them into further pressing Struggs to the point where he had to talk to his psychologist. Another mutual acquaintance of theirs, who was unnamed, was suicidal according to Struggs, though the nature of Sean's coercion is unknown and unverified. Though a deleted, but archived tweet from this same thread shows Sean suggesting a death threat to members of the Zoo community that betrayed his trust. To this day, he hasn't killed anyone that we know of, but a guy this demented, and a Marine with access to firearms to boot, certainly wouldn't have reservations about it if push came to shove. That was an exceptional move for him though. Most of the time, the common Quantum Kitty protocol limited itself to indiscriminately doxing anyone that posed a threat or obstacle to him, even strangers on Twitter who just had the misfortune of expressing they disagreed. Along with this, he mass reported them, either through bots or his network of Zoo friends, until they were banned. After all, Sean was very right to be paranoid about Coyote, as a later video of his included conversations sourced by Winter Green, another Zoo and former friend of Sean's, who also had decided some kind of ethical line was crossed. Imagine being such a degenerate that even other zoos can't put up with it anymore. Regardless, Winter Green said, "Quantum took a fawn's corpse, stuffed it in his fridge, and had sex with it for 3 days. He had Redacted try and look out for him, whilst he put a fox corpse in his trunk and f***ed it. He's had consistent bloodstains left in his house from f***ing deer corpses, and his one regret, according to Redacted, was a rotting raccoon corpse he f***ed. Quantum is f***ed. He's even been looked into by the feds for sending pornographic shit to kids. Sucked a 40-year-old's dick for a job too. Also, Quantum struck the guy's dog. Redacted told him, "You do that again and I'll fucking kill you." Wanted to beat her like he does his puppy. Redacted told me once his puppy wet the bed or floor or something, and Quantum damn near threw him. Slapped him hard apparently. Quantum apparently has no firearms discipline either. Last time Redacted and Quantum got together, Quantum was acting like Billy Badass with his AR, had a loaded mag in, none chambered, and had the flash suppressor pointed at Redacted's dog's head. He's done it multiple times. The guy is a legit abuser and beyond degenerate, to use some of Yote's past words. The veracity of these claims, though initially dubious since they came from someone else in the Zoo community, would be confirmed by another set of screenshots of messages Quantum Kitty had sent another acquaintance of his through Telegram, Zerkalo, apparently addressing these stories, saying, "I was quite sadistic as a young teen, not just towards animals, but people too. I used to beat one of the family's dogs because I hated her for bullying my dog. One time I beat her so severely that she just dropped to the floor and stopped moving. I thought she was dead. Turns out she was just unconscious and woke up shortly after. She was f***ed up for days. When the parents got home and noticed she was acting strange, I just blamed it on illness. I also used to beat my own disabled brother when I got mad, punching him harshly when he was minding his own business, just because I was mad at a game, a fucking mentally disabled person. Obviously, this was years ago and I feel horrible about these things. It fills me with shame and regret every time I think of it. Fortunately, I have a wonderful relationship with both of them nowadays, and I have become a better person. I know I will never do such things again, but will still never forgive myself." If you notice that he conspicuously failed to mention the claims about the dead deer and other roadkill, he would immediately follow that passage up with this whopper. "I used to f*** dead deer I found on the side of the road. Started back in 2018 and continued up until early this year. Managed it probably 24 times. Dragging them into the woods or into my car, and 2 times into my house to f*** them. It was terrible. Blood everywhere and smelled so bad. I invested in a good respirator to filter out the smell of rotting corpses. I reached my breaking point when I had a dead deer in my fridge for 2 days to fuck multiple times. That's when I broke and knew I had to stop. It was so fucking degenerate, I couldn't even look at myself. A cold, dead deer covered in blood laying on my kitchen floor, and I was done fucking it. That was it. I stopped and I haven't done it since. I'm done with that. It was only ever deer. The fox thing Redacted was talking about was for him. He wanted me to pick it up so we could take it back so he could chop off its head and tail to keep it. I did not fuck anything other than the deer. And yeah, I had sex with Redacted's dog behind his back, as if that nasty prick's consent is needed for the dog to do her own thing. What an interesting plot twist. From regretful necrozoophile to proudly embracing having banged someone's dog behind their back because the dog did her own thing. As with all cases like this, any minimal sign of acknowledgement or repentance is immediately followed by becoming defensive and doubling down on the horrible things they've done. Apparently, he would only rarely tell these sob stories to people, and were lucky, or cursed, enough that these prints survived. Right now, I will make a caveat to expound on some information that can either cast suspicion over the source of this information, or further legitimize it. The person from whom these screenshots of Sean's confession came from, Zerkalo, wasn't just a zoophile, but a zoo sadist, who was into drawn gore and animal abuse. On top of that, he's also joined the alt furries, or Nazfurs, which if you don't know, are a group of furries who support National Socialism. Third Reich stuff. Not only that, but he was the administrator of the main alt for Telegram, while the brunt of the groomings and other shenanigans were taking place there. Again, this is tied to Karo the Wolf, who was practically omnipresent, though this time only indirectly, as part of what made the alt furs disintegrate was a member of theirs, Foxler, publicly stating their support for Karo. While there is a plethora of other information on Zerkalo, I'll cap it here and let you decide whether this means the info he provided is unreliable, or if it's reliable precisely because he's enough of an insider to be in contact with people like Sean. Back to Quantum Kitty, despite his supposed disgust at what he'd done to those dead deer, 24 times, by the way, he would remain a pro-contact zoo, meaning he supported not only the destigmatization of zoophilia, but also the promotion of contact between zoos and animals. I, on the other hand, promote the contact of the nearest police force if someone ever tries to debate the ethics of banging animals. Almost 2 months before Coyote's vid came out, Sean's aforementioned paranoia about people connecting these dots and figuring out what kind of person he really was had him prepping for the hot water he was about to be doused with. He took it to Twitter to do some preemptive damage control. Attention fellow zoos, I'm leaving the community tonight. As of late, it's come to my attention some zoos who hate me are working to defame me by spreading rumors about me. This is far from the first time it's happened too. In light of this and numerous other things, I've decided it's time for me to head on out. My focus on this community and Twitter especially has caused me to neglect much more important things in my life. It was fun while it lasted, but it's time for me to check out. Later tonight, I shall delete this account, this time for good. I will not be coming back this time. The Quantum Kitty is now dead. I wish all of you good luck and happy times, and remember, stay defiant. Of course, he was lying and returned almost instantly, just as he had done many times before, and would do many times after. I won't mention every time he switches handles because it's pointless, just know that every once in a while, instead of making some variation of the Quantum Kitty name, he names himself some pretentious surface-level literary reference. I've been mentioning his Twitter for a while now, but we haven't yet had the displeasure of going over his tweets. For example, in this one, Sean appreciates one of his favorite Einstein quotes about being a man of value. It seems he's really into powerful quotes, such as this other one that says, "If you believe in yourself, you can be the reason why a horse gets pregnant," which he emphatically retweeted. Yeah, powerful stuff indeed, guys. This is so f***ed. Though he had minors GTFO in his bio, and often did anti-pedophile lip service to try and prevent anyone from accusing him of it, the fact that he spent every hour of every day constantly fighting people on Twitter over the ethics of zoophilia made being consistent in his PR efforts very difficult. In one instance, he would tweet, "Here's a few facts. Animals are conscious, animals are sentient, animals experience pleasure, animals have emotions. That's it, that's the tweet." To which another user would reply with a copy-paste of his post, but with animals replaced with kids. This would be to no avail, as Sean would double down, saying those were also facts. When asked if being a pedophile was okay, he replied, "There's nothing wrong with being a pedo, only with acting on it. Don't see what this has to do with anything. Not that being a pro-contact zoo isn't bad enough, but this obviously adds a new layer of wretchedness on top of it." When the list of the people he was following was examined, it showed that he was following a number of zoos, including many that were minors, ranging anywhere from 17 all the way down to 13 years old. In another tweet, he would also weirdly brag about having sex with a 17-year-old. As a 20-year-old, I had sex with a 17-year-old too. Feel free to cry about it, Lamau. I'm Quantum Kitty, and I had sex with a 17-year-old. If you think a 20-year-old having sex with a 17-year-old is pedophilia, you're fucking stupid, Lamau. Sean has a history of being in denial, as he also claims that, despite his entire online presence being under the name of Kitty, and him having his profile picture be some kind of furry commission, he is not a furry, which at this point seems like pretty small potatoes in comparison to the rest. In a couple of other tweets, which are now gone from the platform, thanks Elon, he made quite a specific claim, that not only are animals able to consent, but that sex with animals is actually safer than sex with humans. Risk of disease is significantly lower than with humans. Please provide evidence of harm. Animals can consent. Nice bandwagon. Anything else? Care to speak about human STDs? I'll wait. When confronted with resources from this absolute miserable fool who was taking the time out of his day to engage with him, he would pivot to another prepared point. Most STIs don't come from animals, are far deadlier and more prevalent. Even more proof that sex with humans isn't good. It's causing a bunch of harm, right? Call me crazy, but I suspect that most STIs don't come from animals due to the fact that banging animals isn't exactly the most popular practice. When the person he was replying to wouldn't concede, he would terminate the discussion with the statement, "It's clear you are utterly clueless and completely ignorant of immunology and microbiology as well as psychology." It's interesting that he's accusing someone of not being savvy about psychology when, in another tweet, he alleged that he was seeing a therapist who agreed with him that zoophilia was not an issue. Not sure how trustworthy that psychological know-how can actually be, if that's actually the case and he wasn't just lying to give himself credence. He eventually turned on his psychologist once he told him that masturbating once a day qualified him as hypersexual. Besides using his Twitter to like furry not safe for work and retweet vile things I don't dare utter, he would occasionally post videos of the stray dog he had adopted. If this wasn't enough of a red flag, there's even one where he looks to be nude. Thankfully, it seems that he lost custody, if that's what you call it, of the dog in question. Hopefully, he didn't do it any harm, but given his history, I wouldn't count on it. Even if this particular dog got away unscathed, it does seem that Sean relapsed into zoophilic contact and was hinting that he'd filmed it and was willing to share it. In one instance, he even posted a picture of his genitalia, to which the first reply was someone suggesting that it looked disease-ridden, which is par for the course considering where that thing has been. With the attention on Quantum Kitty reaching its boiling point during late 2021, it began dwindling almost immediately after. This was demoralizing for the people who wanted justice done against him, and satisfactory for Sean, who noticed the unwanted attention he had on him slowly left to go attach itself onto some other degenerate. After it had died down enough, returned to his usually scheduled programming, bold as ever, knowing he had gotten away with it. By early February 2022, Winter Green, one of the people who gave Coyote Lovely information, made a thread on Twitter saying, "Just got a bit of bad news, folks. We have a certain quantum level problem. Apparently, Quantum Kitty is back in action, and doxing. After attempting to ruin Coyote Lovely and a few others, Sean is trying to dox anti-zoos. There are people trying to release information about someone who's a good person for both communities, zoo and anti. I highly advise you stay away from Quantum, do not interact, and report Sean to the proper authorities. If you have anything verifiable on him, report it to his platoon commander, report it to the FBI, yes, by UCMJ standards, he is committing a federal crime, report it to his local authorities if you know his locale. This is a dangerous individual and he's willing to ruin lives. For his own gain, for revenge, he's willing to hurt people, and he doesn't care who. Let's get this person the consequence he deserves for actions, including beating his disabled brother and a family dog. Despite being a motivating war cry, especially with the information that Sean's bestiality qualified as a crime and would get him in trouble in the military, Sean's situation continued to languish in obscurity for a while. If the appropriate authorities were notified, they either didn't care or couldn't do anything. At least, that's what everyone was thinking until about 9 months later, when a shocking news article would surface. Local news reported that Sean had been charged with 1 count of aggravated animal cruelty and that he was arrested, though he was released on a bond of $1,500. According to the article, investigations began in June of that year, and the detective suspected Sean was potentially torturing and having sex with animals at his house, a story corroborated by multiple of Sean's neighbors. With a couple weeks of investigations, search and seizure warrants were executed, and a significant amount of evidence was found of Sean engaging in animal cruelty as well as, you guessed it, bestiality. On his phone, a video was uncovered of Sean masturbating his dog, which was shared with someone he was talking to over a messaging app, presumably Telegram. He also offered this person he was talking to the opportunity to have sex with his dog. The article closed with the mention that it was expected that other charges would soon follow. While other people took this to mean Quantum Kitty's days of being a zoo online were done for, he was still extremely online and trying to act like this was business as usual for him. In one particular exchange just a couple of days after his arrest and bond release, he said, "I'm still here, don't hold your breath, sweetheart," followed by an admission to being a necro-zoo sadist. Additionally, he would make the following statement. "I don't know what antis are celebrating. I'm not going anywhere, Lamau. By the way, I turned myself in and was there for 5 hours and got out without paying a dime." The bravado he was putting up to people on Twitter wouldn't last long, as just a few days later, he created a GoFundMe page for himself. The description read, "Hi, Sean here, though you probably know me as Quantum Kitty. Recently, law enforcement launched a bogus crusade against me and charged me with aggravated animal cruelty for supposedly giving my dog a handjob. Now, legal expenses are quite high as you can imagine. Donate to help me, my dog, and the community as a whole to fight this in court." As you can imagine, this pitch wasn't very attractive, and coupled with his demeanor on Twitter, he wasn't able to muster anyone's support. As a consequence, his tune slowly changed as time went by, and he noticed that the walls were closing in on him. Eventually, his entire online presence would be wiped, probably in an effort to stop law enforcement from finding more things to charge him with. Well, all online presence except for one remnant, which would not only stay up, but stay active. One of his many alternate accounts, Valence the Deer, not only continued to post, but also got him in even more trouble. Other than the drawn zoophilia he posted indiscriminately, he also routinely tweeted out pieces of poetry he wrote, which are as enthralling as you would expect, along with the update on his court situation. He also wrote poetry about the court situation to express how the world unfairly persecutes him for being a kind, lovely human being. Prodigal son of the darkness, how forthwith you have returned. Dejected seeker of love, you once again have been burned. Far too late did you realize all the faults that you had amassed. An unbearable price you now pay, you'll never escape your past. Too soon the mask slipped, and a monster is all I could see. You sorrowful martyr of misery, now you will never be free. And now they will discern what truly lies inside, the passion I so long to share, the love I wish no longer to hide. The scarlet letter that stains me, to hate me is their duty. To them I see a beast, but secretly dreams of beauty. No second chances for I, just a lamentable waste of benevolence. Too late I was to discover the compassion I had in such prevalence. Verily, it was a fantastical thinking, contrived by my tired mind. There is heaven for the cruel, but the devil waits for the kind. It's time I've stopped dreaming and recall the lessons of old. Any hope that I have will forever and always be merely fool's gold. So pretentious, it almost makes you forget that this is about him getting arrested for masturbating his dog. Other than these horrors, one thing that stood out on his Twitter account is that he routinely retweeted and added the account of another furry he was attempting to establish contact with, Rorek, a prominent figure in the furry community. Some have speculated that the reason behind Sean's only remaining account being the one where he roleplays as a deer is due to the fact that he wanted to get with Rorek, whose persona is a reindeer. The details behind it are murky and haven't been disclosed as of yet, but on the 27th of December 2022, Rorek filed a lawsuit against Sean for stalking, which resulted in him being arrested once again on January 7th, from what I understand of this legalese. Concurrently with this, another 5 charges were added to his animal abuse case from mid-2022, and as of February 6, 2023, Sean has been criminally convicted, accompanied by his online radio silence. Hopefully, this pans out with Sean being behind bars and on a registry that prevents him from ever coming near an animal again in his life. However, we should always prepare for the worst, given how unequipped certain jurisdictions are to deal with these kinds of cases. Whenever I decide to make the masochistic decision of investigating a zoophile, I never leave unscathed. Partially because their crimes are so heinous, but also because the research goes from just being a rabbit hole to a spider's web of connections to other equally disturbing individuals, with their own unique villain origin stories. For whatever reason, perverts of all kinds seem to have a compulsive need to expound upon each and every one of their nightmare-inducing thoughts to other people, and zoophiles are no exception. This means that, inevitably, they band together into enclaves of interwoven Twitter accounts and social media presences. They spend their days affirming one another's mental illnesses in an echo chamber of depravity. They often create lists to block en masse anyone who objects to their crimes, so they can tune out any semblance of a consequence for their actions. At the end of the day, the only thing that could possibly nag them is their conscience, if they still have one. I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time, leave me alone.
I've heard it 1,000 times before, and it's just not that funny anymore.